They don't need to see you to find you anymore. Your body heat is enough. That single fact has quietly changed warfare, surveillance, and survival. Long before buzzing drones and glowing thermal screens, humans were already battling the problem of heat detection without even knowing the science behind it. Hunters, soldiers, fugitives, and scouts learned the hard way that warmth gives you away. And what they figured out centuries ago still matters today. This isn't science fiction. This is thermal footprint erasure, old-world tricks that make modern eyes struggle to lock onto you. Here's the interesting part. Thermal cameras don't see people. They see temperature differences. Bright white means warm, dark means cold. Anything that breaks that contrast can make a human shape dissolve into the background. And history is packed with clever, low-tech ways people accidentally learn to do exactly that. Understanding what thermal vision really detects. Thermal imaging doesn't detect bodies. It detects heat radiating from surfaces. Your skin, your clothes, even the ground you step on all store and release heat at different rates. Early survivalists didn't know the physics, but they learned the pattern. Move too fast and the ground lights up behind you. Stay still too long and your heat soaks into whatever you're touching. Either way, you leave a glowing signature. Ancient hunters in cold regions noticed animals avoiding bare rock at night. Rock holds heat. Snow doesn't. Early scouts learned to cross frozen rivers instead of land, not just to avoid tracks, but because the ice equalized heat quickly. The lesson was simple. Blend your temperature, not just your shape. Earth as the original thermal shield. Long before camouflage fabric, there was dirt. Across cultures, people coated themselves in mud, clay, ash, and crushed stone, not for ritual, for survival. These materials act as thermal buffers. Mud and clay absorb heat slowly and release it slowly. That means your body heat doesn't spike outward in a sharp, human-shaped outline. Instead, it diffuses. In early 20th century warfare, soldiers in trench environments often smeared wet soil on exposed skin during night operations. It reduced shine, masked scent, and yes, reduced heat contrast. Even in warmer climates, wet earth creates evaporative cooling that lowers surface temperature. The body is still warm, but the outer layer fools the sensor. This is where things get clever. Dry mud cracks and falls off. Wet mud stays uniform. Survivors learn to reapply constantly, especially on hands, face and neck, the hottest giveaway zones on a human body. Water isn't cover, it's a reset button. There's a myth that water hides you from thermal vision completely, but that's just not true. What water actually does is erase your recent heat history. When you submerge, your thermal footprint resets to the water temperature. That's why early river crossings were favoured not just for concealment, but for pursuit evasion as well. Bloodhounds lose scent, trackers lose heat trails, and for a little while thermal contrast disappears, temporarily. Resistance fighters in World War II used shallow marshes and flooded fields to break night surveillance. They didn't stay underwater long. Instead, they used water to cool the body, then moved slowly through vegetation, while their surface temperature matched the environment. Here's the catch. The moment you exit water, Evaporation creates cooling, but movement reheats you fast. That's why, historical manuals emphasize slow movement after immersion. If you rush, your glow comes back. The forgotten power of insulation. Cold climates taught one brutal truth. Insulation hides heat better than thin layers. Fur, wool, layered hides, and thick plant fibers trap warmth close to the body. That actually sounds a bit counterintuitive, but it's exactly why it works. Thermal cameras see surface temperature. If the outer layer stays close to ambient temperature, the heat never escapes in a clear outline. Indigenous Arctic clothing was engineered for this effect. Loose-fitting layers created air gaps. The outer surface stayed cold while the inner layers protected life. Modern survivalists rediscovered this when thermal imaging became common. Tight clothing glows, loose insulation blurs. Even in temperate regions, layered plant fibers, bark cloth or padded garments reduce thermal leakage. Early guerrilla fighters learned to pad shoulders and chests for night movement, breaking the recognizable human silhouette. Terrain is thermal camouflage. One of the oldest survival lessons is also, honestly, one of the most overlooked. Where you stand matters more than how you dress. Stone walls, tree trunks, earthen embankments, and uneven ground all disrupt thermal contrast. A human standing alone on flat ground is obvious, but a human pressed against a warm rock face becomes part of it. During early reconnaissance operations, soldiers were trained to rest against objects that had absorbed daytime heat. Brick walls, boulders, and packed earth all release warmth slowly after sunset. Leaning into them reduced contrast dramatically. This tactic goes back further than warfare. Hunters waiting near sun-warmed stones at dusk found animals approaching closer, unaware. Not because they were invisible, but because they didn't stand out. Movement leaves heat trails. And this is where most people fail. Every step transfers heat. Grass bends and warms, soil compresses and heats. Snow, it records footsteps like glowing footprints. Early trackers knew this without cameras. They followed disturbed ground. Thermal sensors just made it visible. The solution isn't stopping. It's spacing movement. Step on rocks. Step on fallen logs. Step where heat already exists. In forests, move along animal paths where ground temperature is already irregular. Historical escape manuals stressed broken rhythm. Stop, wait, move again, let the ground cool behind you. Heat fades faster than tracks if you give it time. Covering the face and extremities. Hands, feet, face and head betray you first. Blood flow concentrates there. Early cold weather survivors wrapped these areas obsessively, not just for warmth, but for concealment. In early night raids, soldiers used improvised mitts, wrapped boots, and cloth head coverings soaked in water or mud. The goal wasn't comfort, it was thermal dulling. Even today, these zones remain the brightest thermal markers. Control them, and the rest of the body becomes harder to distinguish. What history teaches us about modern drones is pretty fascinating. Drones didn't invent thermal detection. They just made it portable. Every trick discussed here predates electronics. These methods worked against hunters, trackers, and search parties using nothing but eyes, dogs, and intuition. Thermal cameras simply visualize the same weaknesses humans always had. No trick makes you invisible. That's the truth history teaches. What these techniques do is buy time. They break certainty. They force hesitation. And, well, hesitation is survival. Final thoughts and why this knowledge still matters. Thermal footprint erasure isn't about hiding forever. It's about understanding how heat behaves and using that knowledge intelligently. Our ancestors didn't have sensors, but they had consequences. Their lives depended on not being seen. And that's why their solutions still work. If you want more forgotten survival knowledge, real historical tactics and practical wisdom pulled straight from the past, stay with us here at Legacy of Survival. Like the video if this opened your eyes. Subscribe if you want to keep learning what history tried to bury. And share this with someone who thinks survival is all about gadgets. Because, sometimes the oldest tricks still outsmart the newest machines.